This slide kind of comes out of nowhere. It just points out that many of the critical reasoning passages have to do with business topics and involve words like profit and fiscal deficit. The more familiar you can be with profit, revenue, expense, deficit, particularly these ones that combine like revenue, money in, with expenses, money out, that have kind of two directions to them, the better off you'll be, because those just tend to confuse everything, okay? So know your business words. And besides, you're going to business school, so you should know these words. All right, so let's take a look at this one. So once again, you've got 1 minute on this one, and I'd like you to tell me, what do you think is the conclusion in this passage? Your time starts now. That's 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds left. Okay, that's a minute. I'm going to launch the poll. Okay, about 40% of you have voted. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the poll, share the results. So about half of you liked D and half of you liked E, and that's typically what I see with this question. People are kind of split on D and E. So both of these are kind of like conclusions, but again, ask yourself, what is this passage about? What does it purport to give you evidence for? And this passage is about the trade deficit, right? So we want to pick the conclusion that actually addresses trade deficit. Trade deficit, this has to do with international commerce, international trade. So between D and E, D talks about production becoming cheaper for manufacturers, but E talks about increasing the amount of goods available on the global market. So E is the one that really has to do with international trade. D is an intermediate step along the way towards E. Okay, so our conclusion here is that more goods available on global market tax incentives will reduce trade deficit by making more goods available on the global market. That's the conclusion the author is coming to. Now we ask yourself, why does the author think that? What's the premise of this argument? Yeah, so they're saying that the tax incentives will compensate for hiring more workers at higher wages. Okay. Then D becomes a premise, right? Because that's saying, so production will get cheaper. So manufacturers will make more stuff. Okay? And then finally, they're coming to the conclusion that those products will become available on the global market. Now, there's a bunch of assumptions that are made in here. One of them is that tax money will be used to hire more workers, but the extra money will go toward more production. The goods that they make there will be demand for those goods. overseas. You know, they could make a whole bunch of stuff, but if there's no demand for it overseas, it's not going to affect the deficit because no one's buying them. Okay. So there are a lot of assumptions that are made there. Okay. So once again, here's another example of different type of question, but find the conclusion, ask yourself why, and then go in and figure out what are the assumptions that go with all of these why statements that you've made. Okay. Okay, so